bones and holds tight, daring you to keep breathing. The Arctic isn't a place that welcomes you. It's a crucible, a frozen gauntlet that tests every ounce of your will to survive. There's no corner store to grab a snack, no cozy fireplace to thaw your fingers, just endless white wine that howls like it's got a personal grudge, and a silence so deep it feels like the world's holding its breath. Most people wouldn't last a day out here. You'd be shivering, starving, and probably sobbing into your frostbitten hands before the sun even thought about rising, if it rose at all. But the Inuit, the people who've called this icy wilderness home for centuries, didn't just survive this place. They thrived. They turned the Arctic's cruelty into their classroom, its dangers into their tools. Their survival wasn't a fluke or some lucky roll of the dice. It was a masterclass in skill, ingenuity, and a bone-deep understanding of the land. If you could crack open their playbook, learn the secrets they carved into the ice over generations, you might just stand a chance out here. Let's start with something as old as survival itself, fishing through a frozen world. Picture this. You're out on a lake, the ice beneath you thick enough to park a truck on, but so clear you can see, shadows flickering in the water below. Today's ice fishermen roll up like they're staging an invasion. They've got power augers that scream through the ice like a hot knife through butter, fish finders with screens brighter than your phone, heated tents that feel like a spa day compared to the sub-zero wind outside. Their gear? It's a sporting goods store's entire inventory. Rods, reels, bait, chairs, coolers, maybe even a portable speaker blasting a playlist called Ice Vibes Only. The price tag for all this? Enough to buy a decent used car, maybe $5,000 if you're lucky. The effort? You're sweating through your thermals just hauling it all out there, slipping on the ice while cursing the fact that you didn't stretch before this Arctic CrossFit session. It's a production, a spectacle, and it works, sometimes. But the Inuit? They didn't need a single gadget, not one piece of tech that required a battery or a Black Friday sale. Their tools were simple, their methods lean, and their results often better than anything a modern angler could dream of pulling from the ice. The heart of Inuit ice fishing wasn't about chasing fish with a rod and a prayer. It was about building systems. Systems so smart they worked while you were off doing something else, like a passive income stream for survival. The star of the show was the weighted net, a deceptively simple invention that turned the underwater world into an ally. These nets weren't some high-tech mesh you'd find at an outdoor retailer. They were handmade, woven from sinew, baleen, or plant fibers tough enough to withstand the Arctic's deep freeze. The design was pure genius. Weights at the bottom to anchor it in the icy depths, floats at the top to keep it stretched vertical like a curtain across the water. But the real magic happened in how they set it up. Instead of drilling one hole and hoping for the best, Inuit fishers played chess with the ice. They'd cut a series of holes, sometimes in a straight line, sometimes a gentle curve, each one placed with the precision of a surgeon. Then, using a long pole with a hook on the end, they'd thread the net from hole to hole, weaving it beneath the ice like a spider spinning a web. It was slow, deliberate work, but it paid off in ways that made modern fishing look like amateur hour. Why was this so effective? It's all about the fish. In winter, Arctic fish don't just swim around aimlessly. They gather in specific spots where the water's oxygen levels are higher, places like underwater currents or natural springs. These are the fish highways, the busy intersections of the underwater world. The Inuit knew this, not because they had a sonar gadget beeping at them, but because they'd spent generations watching, listening, learning. By stretching their net across these high-traffic zones, they didn't need to lure fish one by one. The fish came to them, whole schools swimming right into the trap. One well-placed net could haul in dozens of fish overnight, while a guy with a rod might sit there for hours and catch one, maybe two if he's lucky. The net was passive, relentless, working 24/7 while the fisher could focus on other tasks, building shelter, hunting, or setting up another net to double the payoff. It was efficiency on steroids, the kind of streamlined brilliance that would make a Silicon Valley CEO jealous. Setting up the net was no walk in the park, though. It took skill, patience, and a kind of sixth sense for the ice. You'd start by cutting the first hole, then push a long pole with a rope tied to it under the ice, aiming for where you wanted, the next hole. How did you know where that was? You listened. The pole would tap against the underside of the ice, a faint sound most people wouldn't even notice. But to an Inuit fisher, that tapping was a GPS signal, guiding them to cut the next hole exactly where the pole waited. They'd pull the rope through, dragging the net's edge with it, and repeat the process until the net was fully deployed, strung like a deadly necklace beneath the ice. Once it was set, the net needed minimal upkeep. You'd check it once or twice a day, pull out the fish, clear any ice buildup, and let it keep working. It was the ultimate set-it-and-forget-it system, catching dinner while you were off solving the next survival puzzle. For deeper waters, the Inuit took things to another level. Pulling a net out completely to check it was a hassle, especially when the wind was screaming and your fingers were going numb. So they came up with a workaround, a main hole big enough to retrieve the net, plus smaller auxiliary holes for the net's ends. They used toggle sticks, simple wooden or bone tools that could be twisted to release or secure the net. This meant they could check their catch and reset the system without dismantling the whole setup. It was the Arctic equivalent of a productivity hack, the kind of work smarter, not harder move that would have today's business gurus scribbling notes for their next TED Talk. Imagine the book title, Frozen Efficiency: How Inuit Fishing Nets Can Transform Your Workflow. It's not as crazy as it sounds, but nets weren't the only trick in their arsenal. When fish weren't biting or the nets weren't enough, Inuit fishers got creative. One technique was all about light. They'd find a patch of thin ice, clear away the snow, and let sunlight pour through like a spotlight into the dark water below. Fish, curious and drawn to the sudden glow, would swim up to investigate. The fisher would stand there, spear in hand, still as a statue, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It was patience turned into an art form, a high-stakes game of freeze tag where losing meant an empty stomach. Another method used decoys, small carved pieces of bone or ivory shaped like local fish, dangled through a hole in the ice. These weren't bait, they were psychological warfare. Certain fish, territorial by nature, would see the decoy as an intruder and charge in to attack, only to get speared or netted. The decoys were beautiful, too, carved with such precision they could pass for museum pieces. Every curve, every fin, was designed to mimic the real thing, proof that survival in the Arctic wasn't just about brute force. It was about understanding the minds of the creatures you hunted. That understanding ran deep. Inuit fishers didn't just know where to fish, they knew when. They could predict when Arctic char would swarm at river mouths, when lake trout would lurk at certain depths, when grayling would hug specific currents. This wasn't guesswork. It was knowledge passed down through stories, songs, and countless winters spent watching the ice. The ice itself was a map, if you knew how to read it. A slight dip in the surface might signal an underwater current where fish gathered. A patch of rougher ice could mean a spring below, a hotspot for hungry schools. Even animal tracks told a story. Places where land animals crossed often had food particles falling through cracks, drawing fish like a buffet line. To an Inuit fisher, the ice wasn't just a barrier. It was a guidebook, a living record of the world beneath. Nothing went to waste. A fish wasn't just food. It was a resource. Heads became soup, rich and warming. Bones were shaped into tools or needles. Organs provided nutrients you couldn't get anywhere else. Skins were turned into waterproof bags or clothing. Fish. Oil? That was gold. Fuel for lamps that burned through the long Arctic night, casting light and heat in a world that offered neither. Every part had a purpose, a testament to a philosophy that saw value in everything. Kids learned this early. starting with miniature versions of fishing gear, practicing on smaller holes under the watchful eyes of their elders. By the time they were adults, these skills were second nature, as natural as breathing. Fishing was survival, but it was also a craft, a way of life woven into the fabric of their culture. Now, let's shift gears. Fishing kept the stomach full, but survival in the Arctic demanded more than a good net. You needed to hunt, to track animals across a landscape that didn't give up its secrets easily. Imagine trudging through fresh snow, the kind that crunches under your boots and swallows your legs with every step. To most of us, snow is just snow, pretty, annoying, maybe a reason to call in sick. But to an Inuit hunter, snow was a storyteller, a canvas painted with clues about every creature that passed through. A single footprint wasn't just a mark, it was a headline, a breaking news alert about what was out there, where it was going, and how long ago it left. Reading snow wasn't just a skill, it was a superpower, one that turned a blank white world into a library of information. Take a set of tracks. To you, it's just a dent in the snow. To an Inuit hunter, it's a novel. The depth of the print tells you how heavy the animal was. Deep for a caribou, shallow for a fox. The spacing shows how fast it was moving, tight for a casual stroll, stretched out for a sprint. The edges? They're a timestamp. Sharp, clean edges mean the track is fresh, maybe minutes old. Rounded edges with a dusting of new snow? That animal was here hours ago, maybe last night. A skilled hunter could look at a track and tell you if the animal was injured. Uneven prints, one side deeper than the other. Hungry? Erratic zigzags, like it was searching desperately for food. Pregnant? A wider stance? Heavier impressions? It's like the snow was whispering secrets, and the hunter was the only one who spoke its language. The snow didn't just hold footprints. It remembered everything. Temperature changed how tracks formed. On warmer days near freezing, prints might have a faint glaze from snow melting and refreezing. On brutally cold days, the snow might be too powdery for clear prints, but a hunter would spot disturbed patterns instead, faint ripples where something heavy had passed. Even light played a role. Fresh snow sparkles differently than compacted. Snow and a trained eye could see a subtle bluish tint where an animal's weight had pressed the crystals together. It's the kind of detail no GPS tracker or wildlife cam could pick up. The kind of nuance that comes from living in the snow, not just passing through it. Hunters didn't stop at single tracks. They wove them into stories. A set of fox prints. Crossing caribou tracks wasn't just a coincidence. It was a timeline. If the fox tracks were on top, the fox came later, maybe smelling the caribou and changing course to follow. If the caribou tracks were fresher, the fox was long gone. Good hunter could read this like a crime scene, piecing together who was where, when, and why. And it wasn't just about animals. The wind left its mark too, carving tiny ridges called sastrugi that always pointed away from the breeze. These were nature's wind veins, telling hunters which way scents were traveling, where to position themselves to stay hidden. One wrong move, one misread track, and you're burning precious energy chasing a ghost in a world where every calorie counts. Kids learned this young, playing games that turned snow into a classroom. They'd guess which animal made a track, how old it was, what it was doing. By their teens, they could read a snowfield like you read a text message, instantly understanding the story unfolding beneath their feet. Modern tech, motion sensors, infrared cameras, GPS collars can tell you where an animal is now, but the snow tells you where it's been, what it was thinking, where it's headed. Scientists studying the Arctic have started leaning on this knowledge, realizing that Inuit trackers see things satellites and sensors miss. The snow is a record, a journal, and the Inuit are its librarians, fluent in a language most of us will never learn. But reading tracks was only half the battle. Out here, you don't just find animals. You have to get close enough to hunt them. And animals like caribou, they're not exactly rolling out the welcome mat. Their peripheral vision is so sharp they can spot you twitching from half a mile away. Their ears can hear your boots crunching snow from hundreds of yards. Their noses, they'll smell your unwashed socks before you even know they're there. So how do you sneak up on a creature that's basically a walking security system? The Inuit had an answer so brilliant it sounds like something out of a spy movie. They stopped being human. Picture a hunter draped in a caribou hide, antlers and all, moving across the snow like he's one of the herd. This wasn't just a costume, it was a full-body disguise, a transformation. The hide had to be perfect, treated to carry the musky scent of caribou, sometimes even rubbed with their urine to mask any trace of human. Gross? Maybe. Effective? Absolutely. The hunter didn't just wear the hide. He became the caribou. He'd study their every move, how they grazed, paused, lifted their heads to scan for danger. Bent low, arms and legs mimicking four-legged. Steps, he'd copy their rhythm, their quirks, even the way they shook snow off their backs. It was performance art, a deadly dance that fooled animals with senses sharper than any surveillance tech. Timing was everything. You didn't just charge in, antlers wobbling like a bad Halloween costume. You waited for the herd to be distracted, grazing, crossing a stream, anything that dulled their alertness. You approached from the right angle, usually downhill where caribou tend to focus less. Every step was calculated, every head bob precise. Mess it up, move too fast, and the herd would bolt, gone in a cloud of snow. But get it right? Historical accounts say hunters could get within 10 feet, close enough to smell the caribou's breath, close enough to strike with a spear or bow. Modern hunters with rifles and scopes shoot from hundreds of yards and call it skill. The Inuit. We're playing a different game, one where stealth and psychology trumped firepower. It wasn't foolproof. Sometimes the disguise worked too well. During mating season, a bull caribou might take a shine to the new guy in the herd, leading to awkward and dangerous encounters. One story tells of a hunter sprinting for his life, shedding his hide as a love-struck bull gave chase. But the risks were worth it. Caribou don't see fine details. They focus on shape and movement. A hunter who nailed the silhouette and rhythm could slip through their defenses, exploiting a glitch in their visual wiring. Some hunts involve teams, multiple hunters in disguise, circling the herd from different angles to herd them toward a trap or awaiting ambush. It was choreography, strategy, and raw nerve rolled into one. Learning this took years. Kids watched their elders, practiced the movements without hides, then graduated to the real thing. Their first successful hunt was a rite of passage, a badge of honor. Modern attempts to copy this, by photographers or adventurers, usually end in failure. Without a lifetime of observation, they're spotted in seconds. The few who pull it off? They've trained with Inuit elders, soaking up knowledge no book or YouTube tutorial can teach. This wasn't just hunting. It was a conversation with the caribou, a way of speaking their language through movement and scent. It showed respect, a recognition that the animal wasn't just prey, but a partner in the dance of survival. Now let's talk seals. Chasing a seal across ice is like trying to catch a shadow in a storm. They feel your footsteps through the ice from hundreds of yards away, slipping into the water before you're close enough to wave hello. Modern hunters might as well try teaching a cat to fetch, but the Inuit didn't chase. They invited. Seals need to breathe, and in winter, they keep breathing holes in the ice, called agluit. These are their lifelines, and the Inuit turned them into opportunities. Finding an aglu was step one, and it wasn't easy. These holes could be tiny, hidden under snow, scattered across miles of ice. But Inuit hunters had eyes like hawks, spotting faint depressions, discolored patches, or the tiniest wisp of steam on a cold day. Where you'd see nothing, they saw a neon sign flashing, "Seal here." Once they found the hole, the real trick began. Instead of standing there, freezing their toes off, hoping a seal would pop up, they used a lure called the scratch trick. With a small tool, carved from antler or ivory, they gently scraped the ice near the hole, mimicking the sound of small fish swimming. The frequency had to be perfect, too loud, and the seal would spook, too soft, and it wouldn't hear. Seals, curious and always hungry, would swim up expecting a snack, only to find a harpoon waiting. The timing was brutal. A split-second window to strike as the seal's head broke the surface. Too early, and it dives. Too late, and it's gone. Hunters might wait hours, sometimes days, motionless in the cold, ready to act in a heartbeat. They'd build snow walls to block the wind, staying silent, turning patience into a weapon. Some hunters upped the game with a feather or piece of fur on a stick near the hole. The slightest air movement from a surfacing seal would make it twitch, giving a fraction of a second's warning. Their tools were simple but precise. The scratching tool for sound, a harpoon with a detachable head to secure the seal, an ice pick to widen the hole, and bone indicators that fell if a seal bumped the setup. Modern science backs this up. Studies show seals are drawn to sounds between 500 and 1,000 hertz, exactly what the scratching tools produced. A skilled hunter could bag a seal in hours, yielding 100 pounds of meat and fat for food, fuel, and waterproofing, all while burning minimal energy. In the Arctic, where calories are life, that efficiency was everything. Kids learned this young, practicing the scratch sound on land, getting feedback from elders until it was perfect. Only then could they try it on the ice. The technique wasn't just hunting. It was a philosophy, a way of working with nature, not against it. Seals vanishing from their holes could even warn of thinning ice, giving hunters a heads up before disaster struck. Today, this method is more cultural heritage than necessity, but it still works, a reminder of how deep Inuit knowledge runs. Now imagine a world without sunlight. From November to February, the Arctic plunges into darkness, a months-long night, where the sun doesn't even peak above the horizon. For most of us, a power outage is a crisis. This is that times a million. But Inuit hunters didn't flinch. Darkness wasn't a barrier. It was just another puzzle to solve. How do you hunt when you can't see? You use the cold. In freezing air, every breath turns to vapor, a visible cloud that betrays an animal's position. Inuit hunters trained their eyes to spot these puffs, distinguishing a caribou's heavy exhale from a fox's quick snort or a polar bear's deep huff. At 40 degrees Celsius, breath clouds linger, drifting far enough to reveal not just what's out there, but how far away and which way it's moving. Silence was key. With no light, hearing took over. Hunters stood still, listening for snow crunching, ice creaking, or the faint huff of a bear. Some claimed they could hear heartbeats, though that might be a tall tale. To stay hidden, they'd breathe slowly into their fur collars, dispersing their own vapor to avoid detection. Approaching prey was a mental game, mapping the terrain. In their heads, calculating wind, snow depth, and obstacles, all blind. A misstep could spook the animal, or worse, lead to a polar bear thinking you're dinner. Stories tell of hunters spotting a rhythmic breath cloud creeping closer, realizing they were being stalked. The Arctic doesn't play favorites. Their tools were minimal. Harpoons and spears ready for instant use, sound signals like soft clicks to coordinate with partners. Darkness made some animals less wary, easier to approach. Hunters also read temperature, through snow's squeak or breath cloud behavior, even telling time by the ice's daily crackle. Kids practiced breath spotting as a game, learning to ID people or actions by their clouds. This skill saved lives, helping find lost hunters in whiteouts or spotting threats. Night vision goggles? They freeze or die in the cold. A hunter's eye never fails. Speaking of ice, it's more than a surface. It's a storyteller. Ice groans, cracks, and sings as it shifts, a language Inuit hunters learn to speak. Thin ice hums high-pitched, thick ice booms deep, seals scratching. New holes send vibrations through the ice, audible from afar if you press your ear or a tool against it. Hunters could pinpoint a hole before it was finished, setting up an ambush. Ice also warned of danger. Lengthwise cracks meant breaking ice, good for seals but risky for travel. Circular cracks signaled thin spots. Water beneath added its own soundtrack, rushing for fast currents, lapping for slow. Fish loved these oxygen-rich zones, so hunters fished there. Large animals like polar bears sent micro-vibrations through the ice, felt by hunters who trained for decades. Temperature shifts made distinct sounds, sharp pops in cold snaps, groans in warm spells, silent ice after noise. A storm was coming. Ice even marked time, cracking differently morning to night. Tools like the Inuit, a bone or ivory rod, amplified underwater sounds when jabbed into the ice, acting like a hydrophone. Hunters tapped ice to send messages miles away, a frozen telegraph. Kids played sound games, learning to ID distant objects by ice vibrations. By adulthood, they could see the ice field with their ears, predicting weather or game from sound alone. Modern tech can't match this, drowned out by our noisy world. Wind was another ally. Animals like polar bears smell seals through ice. Caribou sniff you from miles away. Inuit hunters stayed downwind, checking wind with a wet finger or tossed snow. They mapped wind patterns, swirls around hills, shifts in valleys, predicting changes from cloud shapes or snow crystals. One study showed they could forecast wind shifts 20 minutes before weather tech. They planned routes to stay hidden, waiting for daily wind patterns to align. Clothing from animal, hides held less scent than plant fibers. Teams used wind strategically, one hunter spooking prey to drive it toward others. Modern guides charge thousands for diluted versions of this, admitting Inuit elders know best. It's simple, but takes years to master. Feel the wind, know the land, stay invisible. Bird snares were another gem. Using sinew loops and bait, hunters set traps near feeding spots, catching ptarmigan or grouse as they pecked. One hunter could set dozens in an hour, checking them later for a haul of birds. With zero effort, snares used the bird's own movement to trap it, placed where tracks showed heavy traffic, angled for wind. It was passive hunting, a side hustle for survival. Food storage was just as clever. Meat buried in permafrost pits under heavy rocks, stayed cold but edible, insulated by snow. Fermentation in buried hides created iguanak, a nutrient-packed delicacy. Every catch was used. Fish eyes, packed with protein and omega-3s, boosted night vision. Nothing was wasted, a lesson in resourcefulness we've all but forgotten. This is the Arctic's truth. Survival isn't about gear or luck. It's about knowing the land, the ice, the wind, the animals like their family. The Inuit didn't conquer the cold. They danced with it, learned its steps, and made it their own. Their secrets aren't just skills. They're a way of seeing the world, one that turns a frozen wasteland into a home. Next time you're out in the snow, look closer. The tracks, the wind, the ice, they're talking. You just need to listen.